Hi there, this is Dave Hawes, developer with Powder Software. In this video, I want to spend a few minutes talking about and demonstrating how functions are built in Chartnado. Now, Chartnado takes a fundamentally different approach to building functions and calculations than pretty much all other BI tools. Everything in Chartnado is done graphically. To demonstrate that, I'm going to start out with our demo data. This is a function that you can use that will download some data from our website in the form of a data table. And it's a small data set. It's only got 1,000 rows and is intended for small and simple testing and demonstrations. Now, the thing that you have to know about dealing with the building calculations is that you can add nodes and remove nodes and move nodes around from the canvas whenever you want. But every time a node is clicked on, that node and all of its child nodes are evaluated. So to save some load on our server, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap the data in a cache node so that the data is downloaded once and then all subsequent operations are done off the cache. So now that we've alleviated the load on the server ever so slightly, let's see if we can take all of the data that's in this table and reduce the number of columns a little bit so we can only really work with the stuff that we're interested in. So let's drag on a select node. And a select node takes its child table and allows you to pull out a couple of columns, only the ones that you're interested in. So in this case, if we click on data columns, we'll take the country, the order quantity, the line total, and product category, just for demonstration purposes. If we go back to function builder, you'll notice that now we've reduced the number of columns from the original 11 or whatever it was to down to 4. So makes our life a little easier when we're trying to sort of reason about and deal with the data coming from the table. Now, what we want to do is we want to take this data and let's group it up by country so that we can see the results of the rows for each country. So we're going to drop on a group by node. We'll drop that on there. And in this case, the group by node takes a couple of properties. So what we'll do is we'll go over to the from column node, click on from column, and we'll say that we want to group by country. So you click the data node again, you can see that we've got the country node in the column name. And if you click on the group by node again, you can see that the data has now been grouped by country. And you're starting to see examples of how this is built up in incremental stages, and you can see the results of each of the stages. So for example, we started out with the demo data, we cached it, then we selected a couple of columns, then we did a group by. Now, one of the things that the function builder provides is the results of the stages of the calculation. So you'll notice that the group by, in the inspector, we present the results of the group by, and the inspector has an interesting property in so much as that if there's a data table, you can hyperlink into the data table and see just the rows that are part of that data table only. And because all of these rows are for Australia, you see that the country has nothing but Australia rows. So now let's actually do some calculations with this data table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now illustrate the difference between working with a data table and working with data rows. So right now we've got a data table, but we want to work with the rows individually, and to illustrate that in the simplest possible terms, I'm going to do what's known as add an index column. Now, adding an index column is useful for taking things like top 3 and things of that nature. So the new column can be given a name, so we'll call this my index. And so now we've got a data table that has additional columns added to it. And for the next demo, we'll do a basic calculation with each of the rows of the table. So what I'm going to do now is add a calculated column. And a calculated column will operate on each of the rows in the source table. So what we want to do is for the my index value for each row, we want to do some sort of operation on it. So we'll call the new column multiplied, just for lack of a better name. Now we've got the current data row function, and what this will do is pull out the column of the current data row so that you can use it in calculations. So for example, if we pulled out the column of my index for this calculation, you can see that current data row now reflects 1. The reason for that is when we're doing data table operations, and when you're in the current row function, we show you the first row of the table so that you can see the math working. And so now we're going to put in a calculation so that we take the left value, which is current data row value of 1, and we'll add a number column. And we'll make that 2. And so now the calculation has the value 3. Calculation, that's we want to change that to a multiply, not an add, so we'll change that to multiply. That's better. So now we've got a calculation value of 2. And it's interesting, now you can click around things and you can see, we noticed there was an error. We could see what we were getting wasn't what we were expecting, and so you can debug this kind of operation fairly easily. So the current data row is from the column I index is 1. Multiply that by 2, and we get what we want. You go back to the cross table designer, you click on the add calculated column, and you get what you want. Now that's all well and good, but that's a fairly simple example. So let's do something slightly more interesting and use this data table from each of the rows in a calculation instead. See what that's like. So what we want to do is we'll add another calculated column, drag it on top to here. And this time what we want to do is we want to take the data table for Australia. So again, all these are all Australia rows. And we simply want to sum up the order quantity column. So what we have to do is we add calculated column, and we'll call this order quantity total. And again, for the current data row, what we want to do is, in this case, from the column, we don't want my index anymore. Now we want data table. And the reason that we want data table is because we want access to the rows for Australia, then we want access to the rows for Canada, etc., etc., etc. So now if we go back and click on current data row, you can see that we get all of the rows for Australia. So then what we can do is we can put a summary node on, drag that over there, and in this case we want to do a summarize. Again, we get to pick a data column, so we'll pick the data column of order quantity because that's what we wanted to summarize. Go back to our function builder, and you can see we've now got the value 91, which is the sum total of all the order quantities for Australia. And then if we go back to our function builder and add calculated column again, you can see that we've got all of the order quantities for all of the countries. Now, this isn't quite in the form we want yet, so let's add an order by to this. So we'll drag an order by column on. And you notice that there's 5 columns in the table, so which one do you want to order by on? We'll go up to here and add a new column. Again, we'll use the data column function to pick a column, and in this case we want to order by the order quantity total. So we'll go back and we want to do that descending, and so now we've got an order by in there. And so the last thing we'll do is we'll say, okay, well what I really want is the top 3 of these. So we'll say take, and we'll drop that on there, and you'll notice that the actual take data table comes from the order by, and we don't have a quantity yet, so there's nothing matching. So we'll put in a number, and in this case we wanted the number to be 3, and we have now the top 3 countries ordered descending by order quantity total. And one of the nice things about this system is that, for example, right now what we've got is a number in the quantity column. But there's nothing that says we have to stick with number. We could put in a dashboard parameter in here if we wanted to, so that the user could pick out the number of top countries they wanted, 2, 5, 10, whatever. And basically the idea behind all of this is that all of these pieces are replaceable at runtime through things like ifs and elses and all of this calculation stuff. And the nice thing about the visual designer is that you get to see the output of the results at every step of the operation. And it becomes fairly easy to debug and reason about what exactly is going on. I added a calculated column here. I added another calculated column, I did an order by, and there's evidence and interaction and debuggability at every stage of the operation. So you can see the inputs and you can see the outputs and you can make decisions based on all of that. So that's the general philosophy and a quick demo of the function builder. And the idea behind the function builder is present everywhere in the software. You know, if you want to add all of the markers for a legend, but restrict only one of them only to a certain country, you could do that. You can drive conditional formatting through the function builder. Basically, the idea is everywhere in our software, and once you understand that when you're dealing with the function builder, all you're really dealing with is tables or rows, and you can always see what's happening, then the idea of the function builder shows its value. So hopefully that's given you an overview of the function builder, and we're going to be adding more documentation and videos as time goes along. So thanks for watching.